Oh man, I'm late. I'm running late today. Let's see, is my audio working? How's it going, guys? Happy New Year. I'm going to check my audio. It has been a crazy day. Let's see here, checking audio. Microphone check one, microphone check one. Check, check, check. All right, here we go. How's it going, guys? Happy New Year. It is the end of the year, and I'm going to be talking about quite a few things. I've got some questions that I've been receiving that I promised some of the viewing audience that I'm going to answer. And if you have any questions today, you feel free to put them in there. Before I get started, though, to ensure that I am using my brains, I am going to use, thank you, Magic Mind. Magic Mind is the sponsor of this channel. And I never really thought I would have a channel that was sponsored. If you're a fan of the channel, you know that I don't really have a lot of polish on anything. I tried having really polished videos at one point, and I don't know. Sometimes we really try to polish them up, but I'm not a very polished guy, so I never thought I would have a sponsor. But I'm really happy that these guys sponsored me, and I want to thank Magic Mind. I'm showing the product here. So Magic Mind is the natural nootropic blend that uses all natural nootropics, and you get 8 hours of really, I would compare it to like a really kind of a flow state. And that's what they advertise. They advertise getting into a flow state. Now, if you want to talk about how breathwork gets you into a flow state, I am going to talk a little bit about that today. It's a little something called transient hypofrontality. Try saying that 5 times fast. But we're going to talk about that today if you would like. Hey, Eric, surprise. Hey, good to see you, brother. Nice to have you here. Thanks so much for everybody here. I'm going to enjoy my Magic Mind. And again, thank you to the sponsor of the channel. Now, the thing with Magic Mind, I'm still using Magic Mind 3.0. Apparently, they've come out with a newer version of Magic Mind 4.0, which uses guava as a sweetener. This one still uses the classic honey. And maybe it's because I really got used to this one. I really like 3.0. I like 4.0. I've used it. It's cool. 3.0 is still a little gloppy. 4.0, they've micronized it, so it's like you don't have to shake it even. So here's what I do. I do the shake. So I shake it up, and then I empty half of it, and then I drink half of it. Right? So I'm about half full. And then with that extra space, I really shake it, and then I get the rest of it. And cheers, my friends. Happy Friday. Happy New Year. It's coming. And so we're going to be talking about basically whatever you'd like to talk about. But today I'm going to be answering some questions that I've been receiving via messenger, email, subscribers, some Patreon members who've thrown some questions my direction. And then I've got some really exciting things to tell you about the language of breath, about a new a whole bunch of stuff, but bear with me. I forgot all about it. And then now I have to remember. Delicious. Okay. So again, thank you to Magic Mind for sponsoring the channel. Guys, today we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk about transient hypofrontality, but we're also going to be talking about the issues of 2022, 2023, things I'd like to see happen in the new year. And if you've got any questions, feel free to comment or ask. Curly Hair Artistry. I like that name, Curly Hair. He says, I'm sick and I found your videos about being sick, so I'm resting. That is good on you, my friend, because ultimately when it comes down to being sick, there's all these remedies, there's all this other stuff. But the thing that is the beautiful thing about the human organism, right? The human organism here is that the answer is already within you. And it's this thing called your immune system. And what's interesting is most of the remedies that are like really hardcore, and I've seen a lot of things, and I've tried a lot of things. I will admit that I've tried a lot of things. Most of those remedies, they ignore the fact that the one thing that actually will help you the most is your own immune system. So always lean into the immune system, which means leaning out of anything that's stressful. So, hey, thanks so much. And Luke, nice to have you here. Hey, I'm so glad. Oh, you're at work? Shh. Luke's at work. Guys, please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and we're going to get started. So I did have a question from the audience that I promised you that I would I would answer this. Let's see here. Also, hey, real quick before I get started, I do want to say my friend James and I, we're Wim Hof Method instructors. We do a lot of other stuff. We do Language of Breath. That's our primary thing, but we also do Wim Hof Method. We're doing two just like amazing retreats in Wisconsin. In January, we're doing one. It's from January 6th to January 8th. There are still some spots left for this retreat, which kind of blows my mind. I don't know why there's still spots left, but there are. If you go to my website, you can find out more about that, or you can go to, I tell you what, I'll put some information underneath here a little bit later. If my editor pops on, let me know, Mr. Editor, if, I don't know, send me a text or something like that. And I'd love to just put it in there as well. But it's basically, if you go to sandvalley.com, you'll find Sand Valley Pursuits. I think it's sandvalleypursuits.com. But anyway, all the food is just like gourmet. We get into frozen over lakes. We do like hardcore. I teach you the Wim Hof method, but then we also do DMT breathing. So it's quite a bit of fun, and it's not just fun. It's the idea that is that it's also somewhat transformative. So that's coming up. Just something to put on your radar. Okay, so I had a guy reach out. His name is Dave. Dave, if you're out here, Happy New Year. And he had a question about. Let's see. He had a question about Wim Hof method, I think. And I actually haven't read the question yet. So hopefully this is safe for television. He said, I started this method about the end of October, and I feel like my back pain was going away. I would say it was down to something like 10%, or it was down to something 10%. So he had a 90% improvement. Oh, that's awesome. Let's see, like 90% turn off. All of a sudden this week, it came back with force. I guess what I want to know is this typical for pain to go away and then come back? He says, I do the breaths, the stretching exercises every morning and the cold showers, also at least 4 rounds of breathing before I go to bed at night every day. Okay, so he's doing Wim Hof method, but let me just talk a little bit about breath work and pain. Wim Hof method is great because it's for a lot of us, it's our first breath work we've ever done. And it does make you feel rather good. It allows you to tap into. So anytime you do hyperventilative breath work, which Wim Hof method uses that, anytime you do hyperventilative breath work, you are ramping up your nervous system. So you become more parasympathetic. There will not be a quiz. There will not be a quiz on this later. It's Friday, so chill. You know, if you're a nerd like I am, you might enjoy knowing about this, but you don't have to know about this. But ultimately, what's happening is you're ramping up your nervous system, and when you do this, you're speaking to, and ultimately, you're using the language of breath. Okay, you're ultimately is this picture kind of sideways? Okay, this is gonna bug me. Hang on. Is this right? It still kind of looks funny. Okay. I think it's right. Does it look okay? It kind of looks, maybe it's just the angle of my camera. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to breathe through this and okay, thank you. Lagavaroch. I hope I pronounced your name right. And if not, please forgive me. So when it comes to hyperventilative breath work, now you may also be familiar, like the most scientifically studied breath work that there is something called Sudarshan Kriya. And it doesn't really matter, to be honest, which one of these breath works we're talking about with regards to the ramping up of the nervous system. Anytime you're breathing faster than you normally would, and you're doing hyperventilation style breathing, you're going to ramp up your nervous system. So what does this do? Well, It can do a lot of things, but one of the reasons why people like to do it is because it's very pleasurable. Well, why does it feel so good? Well, a few reasons, but one of them, the primary reason that it gives you the immediate analgesia is that you are starting to produce endorphins. So the word endorphin comes from Latin. It means morphine like. And so you're like, oh, morphine. Yeah, exactly. So literally the word endorphins, it comes from Latin and it means morphine like. And that's what's happening. So you're actually producing opioids in your brain. And it makes you feel better. It dulls the pain. And that's all part of our natural processes. If you think about whenever we were actually the vast majority of human history, this is a good thing for survival. And so it's something that if you can turn off your pain receptors when you are in a dangerous situation of fighting or running away, or you're doing something that's dangerous, that's a good thing, because you're not going to suddenly be distracted by a mosquito bite or something like that. You want to be somewhat oblivious to the pain so that you can do what you need to do. So when we do hyperventilative breath work, we're actually turning on that system. And these are, we also tap into what are called catecholamines, which are stress hormones. So you're like, well, wait a minute. I thought this was making me be relaxed. You're telling me that it's making me be stressed. And in the language of breath, yeah, we would ultimately talk about this. And this is something, if you want to learn more about this, take my course. You can go to my website.com or languageofbreathcollective.com, and you can find out more about that. Actually, let's see. Now I'm sort of looking over here to see about my my picture. Let's see. Language of Breath Collective.com. There we go. And so if you go there, you can find my full course. It is an in-depth course. It's not just, hey, here's a breathing technique that makes you feel better. It's all of breath. It's how it all works, how it speaks to your unconscious mind, how your unconscious mind is always speaking to you and is creating. Literally, we create our own experiences based off of the expectations of our unconscious self. And if that sounds a bit esoteric, believe me, it is not. That is what is happening to you right now. And so there's some research, actually deep research, talking about how we are in a controlled hallucination. Now that sounds kind of trippy because I said hallucination, but ultimately, a hallucination, is ultimately whenever your brain is expecting to see something that's not really there, and it believes it's seeing something that's not really there, and so we call it a hallucination. But when the scientists call it a controlled hallucination, the fact is that you are currently, like, for instance, the information coming into your eyes right now is not necessarily exactly what you're basing your perception of reality on. And I know that might sound weird. And we get about 10 million pieces of information simply through our visual sense every moment of every day. But the interesting fact is that much of this is what our unconscious believes it will see. And then it checks that against what is coming in through your eyes. And if it had to wait, it's interesting, if you actually had to wait for what comes in through your eyes to be processed, you would probably be bumping into things. It would take some time before you were like, okay, this is where I am. So we've got this really intricate system. Coming back to this question, he's talking about pain in Wim Hof method. And so I was talking about anytime you do hyperventilative breath work, you activate some endorphins, you activate catecholamines, so stress hormones. All of these things can have an effect on the way that you feel pain, and they can modulate the pain response. Hey, Ian, nice to have you here, brother. You're just in time. We're just nerding out. I've already fixed my picture, but I think it looks better now. It was all messed up. I don't know. I'm not OCD, but sometimes. So a person asked about hyperventilative breath work and pain. And so what happens is, specifically Wim Hof method. So I want to kind of dispel something. A lot of people think that Wim Hof method specifically is some kind of magical thing. And really what it is, it's using two things that have been used for thousands of years, right? So breath work, hyperventilative breath work, specifically Bostrika, which is ultimately the roots of Wim Hof method. We've got Bostrika, we've got Tumo, and we all breath workers kind of make kind of we kind of mess with this and we tweak this and we kind of make things our own over time. That's what Wim Hof did. And so we've got hyperventilative style of breath work, which increases your endorphins, reduces pain response, all of those things. It also increases norepinephrine, which is an anti-inflammatory, so that can reduce your pain. Another thing that it can do is, of course, with Wim Hof method, you're using cold exposure. So he said he had some back pain. The guy in his question, he had some back pain. So, okay, so back pain, of course, you have some inflammation. Inflammation is typically what, actually my uncle, when I was a kid, he said, most of the pain you will ever feel in your life is gas and inflammation. and he was a wise man. He was a wise man. Gas and inflammation, right? So if you can fart and you can do something about your inflammation, you're doing okay, according to my uncle. Some wise coomers out there, some wise men. But anyway, but it's true. Most of the things that we feel as pain is inflammation. Inflammation, of course, is not necessarily a bad thing. It's the way that our nervous system, our physiology signals to the immune system, hey, you need to do some repair work here. But it does hurt, right? And it's okay that it hurts, because if it didn't hurt, you might still continue to walk on that knee in the same way. You're not going to change the way you're moving, so you can exacerbate injury if it doesn't hurt. So like there's a lot of built-in things there that are perfectly good and there's nothing wrong with it. But let's all face it, pain sucks, right? I don't want to have to feel pain. And so the guy who wrote me, I've already forgot your name. Let me look. I think, was it Dave? Yeah, it was Dave. So Dave, he's had this back pain. He was doing Wim Hof method. So he's doing circular breathing, so hyperventilative breathing and cold exposure. And he said, man, it really helped and it brought him down to like 10% of what he used to feel. Okay. Well, it's likely that, I mean, these are two modalities that work very well. You may also try heat therapy. Heat therapy does this as well. But let's talk about the cold. So with cold, anytime you get into the cold, your locus coeruleus instantly will start to produce norepinephrine. That's the primary mechanism that we see when it comes to working with the cold. So norepinephrine, it's a huge dose. Now, it also makes you feel the anxiety whenever you get into the cold, right? So, so norepinephrine can make you feel anxiety. But if you understand the language of breathing and how it influences your physiology, you can use your breathing to calm yourself down and, okay, I'm going to stay in this cold shower or this ice bath. And you can take advantage of the benefits of increased norepinephrine because that's, hey, cold training. Cold training is going to give you those benefits. So, hey, it makes sense that you have had some mitigation and pain reduction. Now, he says, okay, great. It was working and then suddenly it stopped working. So what's the deal? What gives? So, so here's the thing. There's a couple things. One is that when we do hyperventilative styles of breath work, oftentimes we are also, sadly enough, practicing poor breathing. And this is something I see in my clients a lot. I get a lot of clients just like Dave. So Dave, I get a lot of clients just like you. They've tried some, usually it's Wim Hof method or some other style of hyperventilative breath work. It feels amazing. And for usually about maybe a month or two, it's like, wow, I have found the solution to all my problems. And then there are problems come back. Oh, I have the pain again. I have the anxiety again. I have all these other things. What gives? Well, there's a few different things that might happen. So Dave asked, is this normal? Does this happen to other people? First of all, yes, Dave, it is normal, but it's not, it doesn't have to be. Okay. It's normal because it happens to a lot of other people, but it doesn't have to be normal. It's something that literally, if you train yourself in functional breathing, you're more likely to have less pain. So I was talking about how hyperventilative breath work, it gives you all these immediate benefits, which is why it's very popular. You get all these endorphins, happy chemicals, happy joys, as we say oftentimes. My friend James Stewart always says happy. My friend James Stewart, if you're watching James, I know he's making deals. James is a busy guy, so he's probably not watching. He'll be with me in Sand Valley, but he has all these really awesome sayings that he'll say. He says giddy up all the time. And it makes me want to say giddy up, but I don't want to like steal his thing. Does anybody else say giddy up when you're happy? He says giddy up like whenever he's like, oh man, giddy up. And I would do an Australian accent. What's strange is I do an English accent better than I do an Australian accent, and I do both of them terribly. So please do not ask. Hey, Papa Geek, nice to have you here. Brandon, hey, good to have you. I'm glad you didn't miss it. Let's see. He says playing board games and listening to you in the background and checking in. Well, I'm so glad you're here, brother. Nice to have you. It got warm today in the Midwest. It was like 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And I think that is some kind, that's probably something in Celsius too. But I don't know. I don't know about these things. So anyway, we were talking about, okay. So we get a lot of immediate benefits from doing hyperventilation. It's what? Yeah, of course. It's -8 Celsius. That's right. 60 Fahrenheit is -8. That sounds about right to me. I'm not going to check it, but I just assume. Actually, Papa Geek, we had temperatures here of absolute, like not absolute, but 0 Fahrenheit, which it was like negative. I don't know how many Celsius. It was great. It was so cold. But getting back to Dave's question, what is it with Wim Hof method or hyperventilative breath work and cold exposure that makes you have such an immediate benefit? But it can, if you don't watch it, if you're not careful, you can actually exacerbate pain, and the pain can come back. Well, the immediate benefit of circular breathing, the immediate benefit of cold training is that you get a large dump of the natural pain-killing things in your body, right? The neurochemicals that naturally are anti-inflammatory, that are endogenous opioids, basically. So, I mean, it's some people go to the pharmacy and they take a pain pill, but what you're doing is you're endogenous. You're creating that from yourself. You're creating your own pain pill, and it's not addictive. It's good for you. It's all the good stuff. Well, that's great in the short term, but you also need a long-term goal. You need a long-term strategy. And that is what most people never learn. And so this is what I train a lot of my clients in, because to actually live pain-free. Now, just so you know, let's see here. This knee and this knee both have torn meniscuses. Is it menisci? If it's two, so like with octopus, if you have two octopuses, you're not supposed to say octopuses. You're supposed to say octopi, right? So I'm thinking if it's meniscus, is it two meniscuses or is it two meniscus or menisci? I don't know, but I've torn both of my meniscuses, whatever it is. I've torn them both, and I never had any operations. And they occasionally, especially whenever whenever I really am like running a lot, or if I'm doing a lot of climbing. Some of you guys follow me on Instagram, and I've been doing the Sisyphus. So I've kind of invented my own self-punishment, and it's more philosophy than anything. It's based on the myth of Sisyphus. So I run up and down a hill over and over again. But I take a medicine ball. It's a weighted medicine ball. I carry it up the hill, and I roll it down, and I carry it up the hill based off of the myth of Sisyphus. And I'll talk more about that later if you guys want to. But sometimes they'll flare up, but most of the time I have no problems. I squat in the gym regularly. I have absolutely no problems. And people are like, well, how is that possible? So here's the issue with short-term pain mitigation and long-term pain mitigation. It is that in the short term, if you do something to mitigate the inflammation and the pain, that's fantastic. That's good. And so that I would never say anything bad about that. And I do it myself every day. I do superventilative style breath work, so hyperventilation style breath work. I do cold exposure and cold training, and I'm going to tell you more about that because that's been a big change in my life recently with the way that I train. But those are great in the short term. It's not necessarily going to mitigate the problems if you don't come to grips with why you have the problems, and if you don't come to grips with the way you actually breathe throughout the day. People seem to believe, and I was one of them. So I for the longest time, I believe this too, that breath work is like medicine. I'm going to take a dose. I've even said it myself, minimum efficient dose. And even when I train my breath workers, so every year this year was my first year, and the next year I'll be doing my second class. If you want to learn to be a breath worker, language of breath, my philosophy of breath work is the language of breath. If you wanted to do that, you can go to languageofbreathcollective.com, or you can go to Jesse. Actually, it's languageofbreathcollective.com. That's the only place I have it right now. But I am doing the second round. We only have 3 spots left. Ian, I know you're thinking about it. We only have 3 spots left for this next class. It's going to be some amazing people. But ultimately, there's such a thing as breath work in the short term, and there's such a thing as breath work in the long term. And both of them are important if you really are wanting to live pain-free. By the way, guys, hey, give this a like if you don't mind. We'll tickle the algorithm, maybe. We'll see if we can get that out there. So getting back to it, what we have in the long term, you need to understand that if you are in pain, this is also something that affects your nervous system in a major way. So when we are in pain, we are not in safety. So what that means, so safety is not necessarily the absence of threat. Safety is generally predictability. So if I can predict my surroundings, I feel safe. If I can't predict my surroundings, even if there's no real danger, I may still, my unconscious mind might still pick up danger. And that activates my nervous system. Now, chronically activated nervous system is not necessarily a good thing. It also causes vasoconstriction. It can also increase your inflammation, because as you have a chronically activated nervous system, you're also creating larger, higher, and maybe not higher amounts. Well, also higher, but I would consider it chronic amounts of cortisol. Now, cortisol is a good thing in small doses. So cortisol, it actually boosts your immune system, and it will also reduce inflammation in small quantities. So when you wake up, when you're working out, there's times whenever cortisol is really helpful. But chronic levels of cortisol do the exact opposite. So you'll increase your inflammation, you increase your blood sugar. You're going to increase the amount of inflammation because you're going to be craving more sugar. I mean, there's all kinds of weird things that happen whenever you're chronically in a stress state. And so what I see happening so often is I'll have a client that comes to me a lot like Dave. And Dave, I hope you're watching, or if you're not watching live, maybe you're seeing this on the replay. They had some success with hyperventilation. They've had some success with cold exposure. And those are great in the short term, and they're things to stick with because they are good, right? In the short term, because in the here and now, tomorrow there's going to be a here and now as well. The issue comes whenever a person does hyperventilative breath work and they never really learned how to breathe. And so they start doing hyperventilative breath work, and all they're doing is ramping up their nervous system. So they're getting all these, wow, catecholamines, endorphins, amazing, but they don't really know how to breathe. So they're reinforcing negative breath patterns, which reinforces a high stress state. And a high stress state and pain, they are a feedback loop. So if you have an injury, Dave, you didn't tell me, I don't think you told me, let me check. Did Dave say what happened to his back? He just said back pain. Yeah, he didn't really tell me why. If you have pain, there's either a neurological reason for that or there's a physiological, and oftentimes there's both. Sometimes it is actually, there's a whole school of thought that believes that it is stored trauma, and I'm actually very much part of that school of thought. I think there's really something to it, and in my book that's coming out in the fall of next year, I talk about it a little bit, but there's a reason. There is a reason why that pain is there. And so you need to figure out what that reason is as well. Because when you do like something that is going to ramp up your nervous system, when you do cold exposure, that's great for reducing the inflammation that's currently there, that's causing you the pain. That's great for, in the moment. But if you don't do anything to improve or mitigate the actual injury, then it's a Band-Aid that you're putting a new Band-Aid on every day, as opposed to fixing the problem. So with back pain, let's face it, for most of us, we sit down way too often. For most of us, we have really bad movement patterns. We have a lot of issues that cause that back pain. So while now I'm also, some of you guys know this, if you've ever been my client, you might be aware I'm not just a breath worker. That's my primary focus. That is where I put the vast majority of my research. But I also do personal training. I'm certified nutrition coach. There's a lot of things that come into, I want to know the full picture. And so I'm a former English professor, which I don't know how any of this, I don't know. I don't know. But the point is, now this is what I am. But, but basically, when it comes down to it, you've got to fix the problem. So yes, maybe it helped your back pain, but maybe it made you feel really good, and it took that inflammation out of there. And then you didn't fix the movement problem that caused the issue in the first place. And because you didn't have the inflammation there to help you know, hey, I shouldn't be moving in this way or whatever, you went out there and you exacerbated the injury. So Dave, you didn't tell me a lot about why you have the pain or any major, issues there. And you have to understand, pain is generally there for a reason. And so while we can do a lot with breath, we can do a lot with cold, we can do a lot with heat. Sauna is fantastic for pain. Sauna, you'll increase your norepinephrine just as much, if not more, than in a cold bath. And so a lot of people like to use both, because you get vasoconstriction, vasodilation, and you go back and forth, and you can get a lot of benefits out of that as well. But if you most people have lower cross syndrome, and I would be willing to bet Dave has lower cross syndrome, because we sit down a lot. I know I sit down a lot more than I should. I mean, try writing a book while walking. It's not gonna, it's just not gonna happen. I just finished the complete draft of my book. It's 62,000 words. And I sat down for most of that. That was months of hours sitting at a desk. And so to mitigate that, I had to go to the gym. I had to do a lot of mobility. And still, I'm always fighting it, because if you're a modern human being, you're fighting against strangely enough, the success of our species. Isn't that weird? So it's the success of our species. We are an incredibly successful species because we have a conscious mind that allows us to think about our thinking. Like, this is not something that we share with other animals. And we've changed the world we live in to such a degree that it causes us harm. Like, I mean, I'm able to drink purified water, and I have it coming out of a faucet in my house. You know, there are so many beautiful things about the modern world, but there are things that we don't realize cause us to have those pains. So there is a reason for the pain, Dave. And it's very common, the story that Dave sent me, in that it's very common for a person to notice pain reduction and then they didn't do anything to actually fix the problem and they didn't actually learn how to breathe functionally. That is something that we train people to do in the language of breath. You can take the course, you can work with me, you can work with one of my breath workers, you can train to become one of the breath workers for the language of breath. Again, we only have 3 spots left though. So, and then that is just the rest of this month. February 1st is the cutoff. So if I go and I don't have, I'm just wanting to make sure this is a small class. I don't have a lot of space. So we go to this beautiful place called Silverton, Colorado. And I think this might be the last year we go because I just don't have enough room. Like we rent cabins. Like the mountains are just right outside of the cabin. Like you walk outside the cabin and it's straight up and you're at high elevation. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's this tiny little sleepy town, and we have some of the best breathwork training in the world. And so anyway, but you can train in that, and then you'll understand a little bit more about this. But the thing is, one of the things to understand is that there's no one technique. Like if you learned this is why I say the language of breath. Breathwork is a language that we speak with ourselves. We share control of breathing with our unconscious self. And that is the conduit by which we can listen and speak. It is not about control. You are not controlling your physiology, which is something I used to say all the time. I've heard a lot of breath workers out there that you have a remote control, man. You have a remote control. Your breath work is the remote control of your physiology. It's not true. You are asking yourself something. You are trying to cooperate. It's not a direct control. It is a cooperative control. And so you can speak to your unconscious self. You can listen to your unconscious self. You can become a better team. And then you understand, okay, this is a language. That's literally what it is. And if I were to learn German, which I know a few phrases. So like, just imagine this. Okay, so I know how to say, ich habe Hunger. Ich habe Hunger. Ich habe Hunger, right? I'm hungry. There's a song that I learned. I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. I have sausage. Ich habe Wurst, right? So that's the everybody's like, click. I'm getting off of this live feed. He's going to start singing in German. So, hey, James going. Hey, nice to have you here. Jesse, hope you're good. I hope you had a great Christmas and Happy New Year to you and yours. Thank you, James. Thank you. And same to you. The same to you guys. I hope you had a great Christmas. Hope you have a great New Year. But, I only know a few words and a few phrases in German. I just imagine treating breath work like that. And that's literally what it is. I'm going to learn this one technique. I'm going to learn this one phrase. And that's all I need to know. Breath work is a complete language. Every breath you take, the breath that you're taking right now is influencing your nervous system, which influences every organ in your body, which influences how you feel pain, which influences your hormones, which influences how you breathe the next breath, which influences cell replication, which influences, like, it's all connected. Did I just get too deep? Maybe I got too deep there. That's not that deep though. Anyway, let's talk. I'm going to change the subject real quick. I've got about 20 to 30 more minutes in this live feed. So I am getting back into the cold. So some of you guys might have known that I had a busy year this past year. I trained the first class of the language of breath. I've been traveling all over the place with Vivation. And doing a lot of speaking, and it's great. I'm doing that. I love. I'm sharing breath work. I'm not complaining, but I have not been able to keep up with my ice bathing. And at some point, I believe it was in October, I realized I had not taken an ice bath in like 5 months or something like that. Lou, hey, happy new year, happy holidays. Thanks for being here, Lou. We'll see you next year. So, but anyway, so I have not been able to keep up with my cold training. And so I noticed that and I'm like, okay, this is a great opportunity to learn. This is a great opportunity for me to learn what it's like, because after you do something for years, which I started cold training in earnest in 2013. So 2013 is a long time ago. And so my first year was cold showers only. And then after that, I did regular ice bathing. And, and so I, you kind of forget sometimes. I think after, like, there's that one personal trainer who gained a whole bunch of weight just so he would know what it's like to try to lose weight again. Because, fit people, you're fit your whole life. And then you're coaching people who are not fit. And it's like, what do you really have in common? Now, I do remember being the biggest pansy in the world. And I, I was the biggest, lamest person, like the weakest, most complainingest, most bad attitude about everything in the world most of my life. So, I mean, that I still remember very well. But I thought, okay, this is going to give me a great opportunity to learn how to come back to the cold. And maybe I can revise my cold training ebook and actually bring it out as a published book in a paperback. And so I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to do that. And so I've been coming back to the cold. And I took my very first ice bath in months about 3 weeks ago. And it was intense. It was far more intense than I remembered. And the words that came to mind was Joseph Coburl. Joseph Coburl, he's the guy who beat Wim Hof's records like twice. He's done all these amazing cold, he's an ice swimmer and things like that. And he said the hardest season is the second season, which ultimately it means that once you lose your adaptation, you just expect that you have it. And then whenever you have to earn it back again, it really humbles you. And so I'm coming back into the cold in earnest. So I'll be updating you guys on that. That's something that, of course, it's super cold water coming out of the showers right now. So I'm doing 5 and 10 minute cold showers each day. I'm hopping in my cold tub, but I'm coming back. And so if you're coming into the cold, I'm going to update my cold training book, and I'll be coming out with that really. My goal is to come out with it in March. If you've already purchased the cold training book, you'll get a free update. And if you haven't purchased it yet, if you'd like to get a copy that's paperback, I'll be publishing that hopefully in March. I don't know. There's so many things I have to do, but we'll see. It'll be sometime this year. I'll at least put that promise out there. Papa Geek says, have any New Year's resolutions for 2023? Got any ideas for New Year's resolution around the theme of breathwork and cold training? My answer to that is yes. And here's something that I want to talk about. I've been talking about this for a while. So when I was younger, people were really into New Year's resolutions. And then at some point, it became really kind of the in vogue thing to do was to act like, oh, New Year's resolutions, no one ever keeps them. And so it kind of became passé. I myself am all about New Year's resolutions. I think it's a good thing. Now, having said that, if your New Year's resolution is I would say the best way to do a resolution is not to have the end goal as your resolution. The best way to do a resolution is to have a resolution to do something that will push you toward an end goal that you would like. So for instance, one of my resolutions is to do at least 30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise every single day, 7 days a week. And that's going to be pretty hard to do. Now, I could say that my goal was to burn X number of calories, or my goal is to lose this many pounds. But my my best advice is to try to incorporate some new behavior into your life. And if you're going to say, I'm going to stop doing a certain behavior, my advice to you is to create some kind of a behavior that you do in the place of the behavior you're trying to stop. So, for instance, maybe you say, I'm going to stop smoking cigarettes. Great. That's a great goal. I highly recommend. As a breath worker, I'm kind of anti-smoking. Now, having said that, if you're a smoker, still do breath work, but you may want to cut down. So the way I quit smoking, because I used to smoke everything, but but the way I quit smoking and the way I quit doing I had an addiction for 10 years. I've had some issues. The way I started to do that is I started to do other things in its place. One of the things that I did was at the end of every single day, I would journal. Journaling is one of the best things you can do to start or quit a habit. And that's simply because you're keeping yourself accountable, and you're also taking some time to put into real words. So my neuroscientist friend, Dr. Otto Musick, he would say, you're taking things out of non-representational space and bringing them into symbolic space. And what that basically is you're giving yourself some therapy. You're giving yourself psychotherapy, kind of, ultimately, because you're writing down how you feel, why you feel it. You're writing down your emotions and your feelings, and you're connecting that to your behaviors. That's kind of cognitive behavioral therapy in a way that you're giving yourself. And so that is whatever it is that you do. I would say, think, okay, how would I like, what is the end goal? That's okay. What is the end goal? I would like to build muscle. I would like to burn fat. I would like to, by the end of the year, I would like to be thinner, faster. I would like to, whatever. I don't know. You can do whatever you want to do. But that's not really a resolution. The resolution I would say to do is, what are the behaviors that I need to incorporate into my life to get to that goal? And that is the resolution. So if it's around breath work or cold training, my advice is learning. Okay. So this is when the more you understand yourself, the more you understand how breath work works, that's an enormous amount of power with breath work. So the foundation of all of this is internal awareness. So you can do a lot just learning how to become aware. But I think this is where I feel like it's worth investing. It's worth investing some time and money into really learning about how this stuff works and then implementing that into your life. So there's a lot of free resources on the internet, but the problem is there's so much garbage out there. Even the stuff that I give away for free online, like it's really difficult to create one-offs and have any real impact on a person. So that's why I wrote my book. So A Practical Guide to Breath Work. That's why I created the Language of Breath. It's my philosophy of breath work, but the Language of Breath online course. That's why I created that, because it forces you. And the way I have my course set up is that every week you learn a little bit more and you practice. Hopefully you're gaining some mastery over it, and before you add to that. So don't expect yourself to learn everything all at once. Small changes over time pay off. If that is like the nugget, that is the key that I wish I would have known when I was younger and that I had to learn the hard way. Small changes over time pay off. So whatever it is that you do, whatever it is that you'd like to do for a resolution, whether it's with breath work, cold exposure, whatever it is, resolve to do a behavior that leads to something good, as opposed to resolve to have that something good. So for instance, if it is I want to have a new car, or, I'd like to be able to move into a nicer apartment. Okay. What are the behaviors that are going to put you in a position where you can do that? Right. I would like to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or, I would like, there are behaviors that you can implement that maybe you're not doing now that will put you closer to that goal. The behavior is the key. It's not the end goal, because A lot of people say, okay, you got to visualize that end goal. That's fine. Knowing what you want, that's important. But a lot of people just want to sit around and dream about what they want. The successful people say, okay, what do I want? What are the behaviors that are going to lead me to that? That's what I'm going to resolve to do. Even if you're just doing the behavior and it doesn't feel like it's even connected to the end goal anymore. It's just connected to just the behavior. Believe me, small changes over time pay off. That's a great question, Papa Geek. Thank you for that. Let's see here. Brandon says, my New Year resolution is to do the Language of Breath online course for the third time. Yes. Well, the thing is, if you've done the earlier, my earlier ones, like I had the 7-week course, I had the live courses. Those were fantastic. The new course is really my full philosophy. I've really fleshed it out. What I do a lot of, guys, is what I've learned is that one of the best ways that I've been able to learn is by teaching. So every time I taught a course, every time I teach a workshop or a leader retreat, I learn things too. It might not be about breath work. It might be about breath work. It might be about people. It might be about myself, but there's always something I learn. And when you try to teach something to somebody else, when you try to teach to an audience, you learn things. The Language of Breath online course, as it stands, it's a standalone course, 6 weeks. Actually, there's 7 weeks. The 7th week is how to implement this into your regular life. And so over the course of the online course, yeah, that made sense. You start to learn how it all works. And let me tell you, it's not just breathing techniques. Like my message, my philosophy, the thing that I feel like I have to offer the world of breath work is that it's not just about knowing breathing techniques and doing them when you feel a certain way. There's so much more. So that's a great resolution, Brandon. Thank you for sharing that. Punja Pareen or Punja Paran, thank you for the question. He says, hello, I have a question. Last month, I was taking a cold bath for 3 minutes and then I became sick. Is that so I guess is your question, did the cold bath make you sick, or what to do when you become sick? If you could clarify that for me, I'd appreciate it. Oh, well, crap. So I said 2 things and then you said yes. So is it the cold bath make me sick? Is that your question? The first one. Okay. Did the cold bath make me sick? No, the cold bath didn't necessarily make you sick. The thing that made you sick was a pathogen. A pathogen made you sick. So we know now that what makes us sick is viruses and bacteria. And this is something that we've only really known about this since the mid 1800s. Before that, and for the vast majority of human history, we believed in something called the theory of the 4 humors. And that was we're talking about Aristotle and Hippocrates held this view. And that, we're talking BC, ultimately about 2,500 years of human history. The dominant view of what made you sick and what made you healthy was seen through this lens of the 4 humors. And so it was believed that humans were made out of these 4 liquids, and these 4 liquids were correlated with the 4 elements that at the time people believed that we were made out of. So like fire, water, earth, wind. And so they believed that we're made out of this. And there were 4 liquids within the human body, and each of those would correspond to one of those 4 elements. Well, fire is hot, right? Water is cold, air is dry, and then water is wet, and then earth is cold. It was a confusing system, but they had an elaborate, we're talking about thousands of years of people thinking about this and coming up with their own thoughts and kind of observing what happens when people do a certain thing and kind of observing when, this and that. And so what was believed, and the primary reason why it is so common to have this question, I was cold. Did that make me ill? Is this. It is because in with this scientific, not it wasn't scientific, but with this medical theory, it was believed that when the humors became out of balance, then you would become ill. And so you had fire, and you had, well, ultimately blood was wet and hot. I don't remember all of it, but ultimately you had the fire element and you had like a cold element in you. Ow. Um, and so if you got too cold, that would throw your humors out of balance and that would make you sick. If you got too hot, that would also throw your humors out of balance and that would make you sick. Now, there is some truth to the fact that if you get too cold, it can really make you feel terrible and it can lead to illness. And same with heat. But the reason why we think this, the reason why our mothers say, "Oh, don't get too cold. If there's a little chill out there, you'll come down with something," is because for the vast majority, the theory that dominated human history the longest, at least in the West and in the Middle East, I mean, like a lot of human history was dominated with this theory that when the humors became out of balance, you would fall ill. And so when we say I caught a cold, we are ultimately paying homage to this ridiculous, outdated view on what a human is made out of. Because I caught a cold is referring to I was so cold that it threw my humors out of balance. Interesting, right? Now, I have more to say about that. So, the interesting thing is, it is true that you if you stress yourself too much, you can reduce the effectiveness of your immune system. And cold is a stressor. So it is possible to to get into some kind of a cold something, right? You get into a cold bath or you get into a cold shower for too long and you induce maybe after drop or some mild hypothermia, and you've been stressed out, maybe you were in contact with someone with a virus or bacteria, and maybe your immune system was just kind of barely hanging on, and it's like, okay, there's that thing there, but we're not going to respond to it with the secondary immune system. We're just going to kind of chill. It's going to die on its own. We're taking care of it. It is possible that you had actually ingested some kind of a pathogen and everything was fine until you overdid it in the cold. So a 3-minute ice bath is a long ice bath for most of us. I'm getting back into the cold. I don't go for 3 minutes. I go for a minute and a half or 2 minutes. And there's a lot of research that shows that about 2 minutes in an ice bath, you're going to get most of the benefits anyway that you would get. So you probably overdid it. You might have had a pathogen already in you. And it's possible that that added stress was just enough of an additional stressor that it allowed that virus or bacteria to replicate a little bit faster than your immune system could handle, and you became ill. The cold didn't make you sick, but the stress that you might have induced by overdoing it in the cold, it could have been enough to allow the virus to propagate. Now, having said that, um, I would. It's still the virus. It's still the bacteria. That's what makes you ill. All right. And most likely it was just a coincidence. But then again, if you were in an ice bath for 3 minutes, I don't know what your regular routines are. Maybe you're an everyday guy for 3 minutes and that was part of your regular routine. I don't know. But it's possible that you overdid it a little bit. You stressed yourself, which might have influenced your immune system in a negative way for just long enough for that virus to propagate and to replicate itself enough times. And okay, now that secondary immune system, which is what we associate with being ill. So your primary immune system is your skin, your mucous membranes, and things like everything that keeps the outside. And then your secondary immune system is the one that causes all the symptoms. That's probably that's what makes you feel sick. So that once that's activated, you're going to get symptoms. So um, let's see. Your grandma said that the cold water made you sick. Well, I mean, like I said, some things are such a part of the human experience that we can't that they just stay with us, right? So the concept that being cold makes you ill, it comes from that outdated view of the four humors. And like because they believe that just simply feeling cold, like for instance, if you go outside without a coat on, a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, you're going to get sick," right? And the reality is, I mean, unless you're overdoing it or I mean, you can stress, chronic stress is what's really the big culprit there. And if you can reduce that stress, if you can make yourself using language of breath, using regular cold exposure, like consistent cold exposure, if you can help yourself become a person who can tolerate more stress, then you'll have lower levels of cortisol, which I mean, there's a whole cascade of things that happen there. Good question. Thank you so much. He says, I wonder if I'm sick or is it wise to start over or wait for me to get better? Yeah, don't get in the cold until you're healthy. Again, that's a stressor and you only have so much energy. And you want to tell your nervous system, you want to guide your physiology, your immune system. You want to make sure that it has the focus of your energy as opposed to, okay, now I have to focus on maintaining homeostasis in this cold while I'm still trying to fight off this virus. You'll see that people who are chronically stressed are generally chronically sick. And that's a matter of regulation. It's not a matter necessarily of, I was in the cold. It's a matter of I am under chronic stress and I'm not able to handle it. I'm not able to regulate it. And because of that, there's physiological, hormonal, a lot of these changes that cause you to have a weakened immune system. And that's generally what causes chronic illness. Great question. Let's see here. DeCastro, let's see. I'll try to resume my question. If you don't get it, I can rewrite it. Notice that you didn't kept that line of thought. Okay, let me see if the next one. Okay. Out of the exercises of supplements, hyperventilation, the problem would not be the efficacy. So what would you call a wrong breathing pattern? Oh, throughout the day, right? Okay, I get where you're going. Is it because shallow breathing and the lack of natural pattern remembering too profound and slowly? Let's see here. Hey, Lagavaroche, thanks so much for being here. Hope you have a happy new year. Let's see here. So DeCastro, let's see, Little Charmer. Yeah, I'm doing a workshop in Anderson, Indiana on May 20th. Yeah, so if you'd like to attend that, I'm looking forward. It's going to be a really cool one because it's a small space. So I think we only have enough room for 15 people. So it's going to be a nice small one. You'll get a lot of time with me, and we'll have. So yeah, I have it on the Wim Hof site or the Eventbrite. If you go to I think I have it on my website. I think so. If you go to jessekummer.com, let me just type that in. But yeah, it's Eventbrite. I have an Eventbrite for it. jessekummer.com. There it is. Oh, cool. Yeah, you'll see me. Yeah, you bought it. You bought the ticket at the right place. Okay. So DeCastro is asking, I think, about what I was talking about earlier. And what I was talking about earlier was the issues of people not really learning how to breathe. They'll learn a superventilative style, Wim Hof method, Sudarshan Kriya, a lot of these other ones. And then they experience all these pain mitigation. Wow, my pain's gone. I feel better. They'll start doing cold training or whatever. And then about a month or so later, they are like, man, my pain's all back. What happened? And yeah, the thing is, the reason why I created the course, the 6-week online course, the reason why I just finished a 62,000 word book is because it's something that it takes a long time to really work through this with you. I have workshops, retreats, and things like that where I'm able to go more in depth. But ultimately, yes, what we see is that it's like learning. If I learned German or Spanish and I only knew one or two sentences, maybe it's not really. It might get me really far, in one spot, but it's not going to get me. It's not really learning how to use my breathing to create a better life. And what I'll see is oftentimes a person will have these amazing changes early on, and then they don't learn how to breathe. They're breathing stress into their life. They do have, well, you could say shallow breathing is one of the things, sure. Dysfunctional breathing of many kinds. You'll see that they have they don't really, like with the instance of pain. A lot of times a person will feel better after they do a cold bath or a superventilative technique. And then when that inflammation subsides, they feel better. And then they go out and they didn't really fix the problem. They still have dysfunctional movement patterns. And all they did is really, it's kind of a Band-Aid at that point. So when we're approaching pain, you can't just say, I'm going to do a breathwork technique and then it's magically going to be taken away, right? That's not a realistic way to look at breath work. It's sold that way. There's plenty of people out there that will say, oh, learn this breathwork technique and you'll never get sick and all your pain will go away. And but the reality is that the human organism is far more complex. We're constantly moving. Diet makes a big difference. Movement patterns make a big difference. It all comes into play. So, and then in addition to that, the way you breathe throughout the rest of the 24 hours influences your nervous system in a profound way. And the thing is, you can learn how to listen to your unconscious mind, and it's going to give you a lot of cues, and you can adjust your breathing accordingly throughout the day to form a better relationship with that unconscious mind, which is ultimately responsible for all of the functions within your physiology. So it's kind of complex. I hope that's kind of like a general encapsulation of it. To learn more, go to languageofbreathcollective.com. Reach out to me on jessecoomer.com. You can go to jessecoomer.com. I think I have my course. Yeah, I have my courses there too at jessecoomer.com. And that's where I've taken, we're talking about hours worth of instruction to guide you through step-by-step how to learn the language of breathing. The thing is that my course, my book, my message, my philosophy is only half about breathing, right? Because if all you do is learn breathing techniques or functional breathing, if all you learn is I'm supposed to breathe through the nose, right? It's like learning a bunch of phrases in the language and not understanding when someone speaks it to you, right? So if I learned a bunch of phrases, but I never really learned how to understand when someone's speaking it to me, I can't really have a conversation. I can't really have a productive relationship. So that's how the language of breath works. And that's like my philosophy of breath work is beyond a single technique in that way. So thank you so much. Punja has another question. He says, what is better, cold shower or cold bath? Whichever one you're willing to do. That's, consistency. The one that you're willing to do is the one to do. And if you're willing to do both, then, the one that is going to give you the most exposure. So if you go in a bathtub, a lot of times, like if you're me, I'm a big guy. I get in my bathtub, and then most of my body is just skin to the bathtub, and so it's just water on top of my body. That's not really that's worse than if I were to take a cold shower. If I go outside into my big horse trough, I'm getting a better exposure because more of my skin is being exposed to the cold. So it's a greater hormetic stressor. That's a good question. And then what do you think is the best? I want to say you said the beast benefit. I like that. What do you think is the best benefit? I think you might have said. I think the best benefit of cold training is the psychological benefit of doing something difficult and doing it on purpose. It's not a biological thing, right? But it influences your psychology, which is ultimately an expression, which your physiology is an expression of. It's all connected. You are not a mind and a body. You are a human being, 37.2 billion cells working together to help you thrive and survive on planet Earth, my friends. And I hope this year has been a blessing for you. 2023 is coming, and I'm really excited about a lot of the things I'm doing. I'm excited about the way the world the world is a scary place. And if you look at the news, there's all sorts of scary things, right? There's all sorts of reasons to think that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. But I will say this, that there is an underground, there's this, sure, the big trees, they are scary, bad, but there's undergrowth happening right now. And there is a movement that I'm seeing, and I'm very, very blessed to be a part of. And you're a part of it too. We are a part of it. And that is learning to take responsibility for ourselves and becoming sovereign. To become really free is to become disciplined and to actually take responsibility for my psychological, my physiological health. And it's more than just reduce inflammation, burn fat, all that stuff. It's about living as a whole organism and really ultimately breaking free of a lot of the bonds that we put ourselves in. This year, like I said, I'll be training the second class of the Language of Breathworker program. If you're interested in that, reach out to me. The deadline is at the end of this month, but as soon as those 3 spots are filled, we're done. I don't want to have I don't have enough room for a giant class. So I have enough room for just a certain number of people. And then once it's filled with qualified people, which we've got some really awesome people, then we're just going to, that's what we're going to do. And then next year probably will be a big class. So if you don't make it in this year, next year, I'll probably have a really big class, and that's great. But if you'd like to be in the second class, the only 2 classes that are the little classes, because I'm trying to grow this slowly as opposed to just, hey, everybody, I want really high quality people to be in this collective, especially at the beginning and always. I don't ever want crazy, weird, bad people. I mean, but I'm looking for people that are really passionate. And if you're looking for that, go ahead and reach out to me. Check out the languageofbreathcollective.com for our course. If you go to jessecoomer.com, just one last thing. I have a free program. It's $50 is the price tag on it, but I also have a free option. If you or someone you love is struggling from addiction, it is a course called Recovery Breath, and it's specifically teaching the things that I wish I would have known whenever I was addicted to opioids and in that recovery state. It's not meant to take the place of traditional therapies. It's meant to be as a helper, especially as you move forward into the rest of your life, living a free life. So a lot of things coming up in 2023. Reach out to me if you have questions. Sign up for my website, my email list, and I really do appreciate. I really do appreciate all of you guys, especially if you're in my Patreon club. If you're not in the Patreon club, check us out. You can go to jessecoomer.com, or you go to my landing page on YouTube. It's only $5 a month. And the Patreon club is the only reason I can give a free course out. Like, it's expensive to have courses. You have to pay fees and processing things, and there's a monthly and annual charges. But because of the Patreon members, I'm able to offer a free course of breath work that helps people if you're trying to live a free life without addiction. And even if you're not addicted to anything and you're just struggling, it's a free course. You can, I mean, I'm okay. I created that course. I made a promise to my Patreon club that I was going to do it, and I did it. And the next thing we're working on, well, I've got a bunch of cool things. We're working on programs for first responders, for law enforcement. We want better law enforcement. We want people to be able to make better decisions, and we want them to be able to go home to their families. Right now, there's a sad statistic that if you're a police officer or a firefighter, you're more likely to die of suicide than you are to die on the job in the line of duty. And that's awful. And so we want to be able to give police officers and firefighters the tools that they need, and also EMT, 911 workers, things, everybody in public safety. We want to be able to give them the tools that they need so that they can mitigate stress and they can make better decisions. So next year will be the first year. I am the first breath worker that I know of to create a certification specifically for law enforcement and first responders, public safety individuals. So if that's something you're interested in, or if you know an agency that's interested in that sort of thing, you can have them reach out to me at jessecoomer.com. Anyway, guys, I am droning on because this is the last live of 2022, and it's been a great year. It's flown by, and I want to say thank you to all of you guys for being here, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you next year. So happy New Year, happy holidays. My best wishes to you. Be safe out there. And as always, don't forget to go out there and be kind to one another. I see I've got some comments here. If you'd like to reach out to me via email, you can always do that. And I'd be happy to try to help you as well. If words are not your thing, we can always try to schedule a meeting. Skull, Papa Geek. Happy holidays, little charmer, and happy New Year to all of you. Bye-bye.